Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we should be talking about the Warrior Cats graphic novel adaptation, Volume 2. This book is a lot. This book is a lot. Yeah, I was a little skeptical going into this book, considering the task it had laid out for itself, because it was pitched to us to cover certain elements from Fire and Ice that it missed in Volume 1, whilst also covering Forest of Secrets and Rising Storm. Rising Storm being of which my favorite book from the original series. And let me tell you, this book has very similar problems to the first volume, only exponentially worse. So, the good parts of this book. So first off, the art style. It's amazing. I don't need to tell you that. It's an amazing art style. The characters feel very alive. The kind of way each character is individually drawn, how they express themselves is very unique. You know, the drama queen that is Cloudpaw is done excellently. The artists have done an amazing job in capturing the Warrior Cats in a very unique way. I think that cannot be understated. Also, in terms of the story elements that I think they did really well, Cinderpelt / Cinderpaw was done very interestingly here. So the bulk of her story, the stuff that was pushed from Fire and Ice to here, it's immediate. It's a bit jarring, to be honest, the fact that it just happens immediately. But I mean, that's kind of how it happened in the first book. They're just front loading a lot of it. But this book is really about her as a character, because her injury happens. She's confined to the medicine cat den. She goes through her whole arc of it's kind of implied that she will not be that she can't be a warrior. But it's weird because in the books, it said that she cannot be a warrior. But this doesn't. It doesn't say that she can't be a warrior. It does say that, it doesn't really say much. It kind of implies that she won't be a warrior. But later in the book, there's a moment where Fireheart talks to her. And he says, Deadfoot exists, he's a deputy, you could still be a warrior. Which is a really good point, because that's never really brought up in the original series. The fact that you have a warrior with a disability who is a proficient warrior who is a deputy. And that could be the same for Cinderpelt. But she says, no, I like being a medicine cat, so I'm going to remain being a medicine cat. So it does take away certain aspects, but not in a bad way. And here's the thing, I saw some people talking about this online, and the way they were talking about it, it implied that they made it so that Cinderpelt had a choice in becoming a medicine cat. Which, here's the thing, Cinderpelt always had a choice in being a medicine cat. The difference with the graphic novel adaptation is that it made it that she had more agency in her decision. In the books, in the main series, yes, she made the choice to be a medicine cat, but it was kind of presented as her only option. Here, she's presented with multiple options, but she still chooses this one, which I think was a very good decision. And yes, we do have because of the way we did it, we did kind of take away her, sad arc, where she's, doubting herself and her abilities to be useful. That's taken away, which, on the one hand, it's good because it makes it so that she has her, chipper attitude, and she's more active, and again has more agency as a character. But at the same time, part of what they took away from her doubting herself and how doubting herself as a warrior and as a medicine cat has to do with certain elements that I'll talk about in the bad section, because there's a lot of it. But overall, I think it was very well handled. Same with the Cloudpaw stuff. Yes, it is condensed somewhat gratuitously, but it hits the same beats and in a way that is unique and presented very interestingly. I like how Princess shows up and has a little moment. That was really neat. I think that was cool. But that's most of the good stuff. I might think of some more stuff as we go along, but yeah, the latter half of this book is a train wreck. In the most egregious of sense. So, when the first graphic novel adaptation came out, the general consensus amongst myself and the wider community was that as an adaptation of Into the Wild, it was really good. As an adaptation of Fire and Ice, the first volume was severely lacking. This has the same problem, but worse, essentially. So, Volume 2 is a really good adaptation of Force of Secrets. Like, there were certain choices they made. For instance, combining the Misty Foot conversation about what happened at the Battle of Sunning Rocks and also the Greypool conversation into one scene. That was smart. That kind of condensing worked a lot for the benefit of the story. Also trimming down the, Fireheart and Greystripe River Clan getting in trouble plot point and cutting that. They still mention it, but they cut most of it. That was smart. But at the same time, what they did with Rising Storm is borderline unforgivable. They cut and reduce and just get rid of so much, it's egregious. But before we get there, let's talk about the stuff that I didn't like. So like I said, there were certain things they carried over from Fire and Ice. The Cinderpelt plotline, the Cloud Paw plotline, the Broken Tail plotline, which is fine, it's not bad. But the weirdest thing that they carried over from Fire and Ice, that I was sure they cut, was the Greystripe and Fireheart argument, arc. In Fire and Ice, there's a point where Fireheart and Greystripe are not on speaking terms. They do not communicate at all. They're very cold to each other. And I thought that they had cut that from this adaptation, because it was kind of long and drawn out. It still is. And I thought they had cut that because of the way that the first volume did. But they didn't. They just moved over here, which makes it worse. Because originally, in the main series, this kind of whole arc where they're basically cold to each other and not talking and not really friends, this concludes with the Battle of Wind Clan. The resolution is that Fireheart spares Silverstream, and while Firestar does disagree with Greystripe's choice, he doesn't actively try to stop him. He's more like, I don't agree with your choice, but do whatever you want to do. But he's still his friend. But they've swapped it. In that arc, they cut the middleman out, and I felt like in Volume 1, they were cutting it because, again, while Fireheart did not agree with Greystripe's decision, he would still stand by him as a friend. But no, they just pushed that entire plotline here. Which is weird, because instead of the resolution being the Battle of Wind Clan, the resolution to them not being friends is Silverstream's death. Which, is a choice. Silverstream's death was always going to be a hard thing for this adaptation to do, because while this adaptation was, quote-unquote, fixing things, well, that's not really a good way to put it, but more so making adjustments for the betterment of the story, while it was doing that, the problem is that Silverstream's death was always going to be something that they couldn't really work around, But, in a way, they've made it worse, because they made her a plot device, but in a different way. Instead of her being a plot device for people's characters, for Fireheart and Greystripe, which she still is, she's now a plot device to end their conflict, which kind of makes it worse. I don't know why this was a choice that was made. What's also interesting is they also tie in the River Clan Prey thing here, but they cut the end of that, and they kind of lead the discovery into Silverstream's death, which is fine. You cut that whole resolution, you're trimming the fat, but it was weird, the fact that they decided to do that. I don't know. I don't think that was a smart idea, because again, you've actively made it worse, which again, that doesn't help your situation. But then we get the most egregious thing that was done, and that of which being the ending of Rising Storm, because they breeze through Rising Storm, much like Fire and Ice. They just, after Tiger Claw is exiled, we don't see him for the rest of the book. He doesn't show up. He doesn't show up to kill Running Wind, because Running Wind's still alive at the end of the book. He doesn't show up during any of the shenanigans with the Shadow Clan cats, like Little Cloud and Whitethroat, not characters in this book. So that whole Cinderpelt trying to become a good medicine cat, that whole thing is cut, which is bad on multiple levels, because one, it cuts the Shadow Clan sickness plot, at least until the next arc, which is looking like the next volume, which is looking like what they'll do, which is weird because it kind of comes out of nowhere instead of being like a gradual build-up. They cut Whitethroat's death, at least from this volume, meaning the kind of intrigue of what's happening there. They cut Cinderpelt's relationship with Little Cloud, which is also stupid, because she's the reason he becomes a medicine cat. They also cut her, like, trying to prove herself after Silverstream's death. And yes, they could still do this plotline, but they're going to have to heavily recontextualize it. Instead of them trying to escape the sickness, they're going to have to try to escape, Tiger Star, which effectively might make Firestar's character worse. Because at least in the original books, when he was trying to get them out, he was doing so to try to protect Cinderpelt. If he sends them back, like if they continue this plotline in the Volume 3, then he would actively try to send them back to Tiger Star, which will be a good look. And speaking of which, the ending is just the worst thing that they could have possibly done. It is so abysmal. So the ending of this book is after the fire, which fire does happen. It's a bittersweet scene. I like how they did the Yellow Fang ending. Like, I don't really think there's a way you could have messed that up, and they didn't. It was really, really sweet, and I loved how they did that. But once all the cats get back to camp, essentially, Blue Star has a crash out. She, like, completely loses it. She rejects StarClan. She rejects, she becomes an atheist, essentially. She rejects everything, and she fully crashes out, and everyone witnesses this. And also, at the end of it, it also teases the dogs, like in this full spread, which looks really, really nice. They tease the pack, which is cool, foreshadowing all that. They're a big part of Book 5. But they also tease something at the very end, Tiger Claw overlooking the Moonstone. And that's what I hate about the ending. The thing is, Rising Storm has by far one of the best endings in terms of intrigue in all of Warrior Cats. Like the ending where Tiger Star is now leader of Shadow Clan, aka the quote-unquote evil clan, is by far one of the most effective twists Warrior Cats has ever done. And that has lost its value by doing this ending, which is not a bad ending, but by not doing the original Rising Storm ending, you have, one, ruined the ending, impact of, the climax, but also you ruined the twist by showing Tiger Claw over the Moonstone. And yeah, not everyone might get it, like the majority of the audience who have not read the main series, they might not fully understand, but they'll at least have a pretty good guess. However, which is just, I don't like what they did this. Instead of making it like an impactful twist ending, it's just gonna be another scene. Like, best case scenario, it's just the end of, part 1 of Volume 3. Which is, fine, but it's lost all of the value that it originally had. So, I don't know, I'm very disappointed that happens. However, to its credit, the ending of Volume 2, the one thing I do like about it is that by revealing to the entire clan that she does not believe in StarClan, that she actively rejects StarClan, Blue Star specifically, effectively, the people behind this volume have written a way for the narrative to not need Snowkit as a plot device. Because while the clan in the main series was somewhat aware of Blue Star's thoughts and process, they weren't fully aware until Snowkit died. Snowkit as a plot device was originally supposed to be used to show the entire clan that Blue Star did not believe in StarClan and was actively rejecting them. By doing it here, in this ending, and her speech, it's a good speech, to give them credit. Again, you have written a way for you to not utilize Snowkit, which is genius, especially if you do not want to open that can of worms. So I applaud them for that choice. The problem is, while that choice is a good choice, and while the ending is still a very emotionally charged and emotionally impactful ending, it pales in comparison to Rising Storm's original ending. The impact of that scene, of that twist, it cannot replicate it, and it will never replicate it, which is unfortunate. And almost, and I don't really think it's fully their fault. You know, the duo of the people who do this graphic novel adaptation, I don't think they're fully to blame for this. Because adapting 600 pages of material at a minimum per volume, that was like under 300, was never going to work. At least work in the sense of being able to get every major detail. And this isn't a situation where you have to cut minor details. They're cutting major details. And it's frustrating. Again, I don't think it's fully their fault, because they clearly care about this series. They care about Warrior Cats. Like, they would not have done the Snow Kid thing, where they had effectively written out of the story. They wouldn't have made such an effort to make Cinderpelt's story better if they did not care. I genuinely believe they care about this series, which is why I do not think it's their fault that certain cuts had to be made. I mean, Volume 3, we have a page count for that volume. It's 272, give or take. That's unacceptable, because they have to adapt the stuff they missed from Book 4, the entirety of Book 5, and the entirety of Book 6. The latter of two books have immense ramifications for the entire series. There is so much plot that they have to do, and I am afraid of what they'll have to cut, because either they're going to have to condense everything or cut major story beats. And there definitely are some minor story beats they could cut and reduce and make footnotes, but you have a risk of lessening the impact of the story. Like, if each of these volumes had minimum 50 more pages to tell a more succinct story, I think that would be something they should have done. Which, again, I do not think it is their fault. I think there probably was a mandate that they had to keep the volumes under a certain page limit. And the fact they managed to condense it to this point without making it, like, incomprehensible is impressive. Because while I have issues with how certain story beats were cut, I cannot deny that they have recontextualized the story to work without them. While I'm disappointed by that, I can understand the tremendous effort that went into it. But the fact that Rising Storm was done so dirty deeply troubles me for how Volume 3 will close out the story. Because at least with stuff like Arc 2 and Arc 3, which we know are getting graphic novel adaptations, both of those arcs are much more easily condensable. Like, for instance, the New Prophecy, there's a lot of fluff. There's so much fluff. You could very easily condense that into 2 volumes without really missing anything. Arc 3, kind of the same. Like, Books 1 and 2, you can condense the hell out of. Books 3 and kind of Book 4, you can kind of condense. 5 and 6, not really. There's a lot of story stuff you have to keep in there. And then Arc 4, and it's going to be difficult to condense, but we don't really have confirmation yet, but it's all but guaranteed at this point. But, again, this reiterates my point that having less than 300 pages, having less than, 280, which I think is, the max for how long these books are, that was never going to work. Because, again, you have to adapt 2.5 books worth of story in under 300 pages, which is ridiculous. I do not know how they're going to be able to do it in a way that does not cut major story beats. I'm genuinely concerned. And again, I am of the opinion that I do not think it's fully their fault. I think that they were probably given a mandate and they had to work around it. But again, to their credit, they have worked with it to the best of their ability. And unless we get more information about the process of how this graphic novel adaptation was conceived, how it was handled, I don't know. And here's the thing. I'm complaining so much about how the graphic novel was handled, But I still think it was overall good. While I am deeply distressed about how bad it was, these certain aspects that were bad, like cutting of elements, condensing of elements, straight up removing plot points I think should not have been removed, I cannot deny the good did outweigh the bad, if but barely. And besides, it's not how you start a story It's not how you do the middle part of the story. It's about how you end a story. And until we see that ending, I don't know how to feel about this graphic novel adaptation so far. We'll have to wait and see. And until then, let me know what you guys think. Did you like this adaptation? Did you dislike it? Do you have similar problems that I have, or ones that I didn't even consider? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice rest of your day.